The silver ship cut through the darkness of space like a needle threading through black fabric. Inside, Captain Han Do-yoon stood at the observation window, watching the massive station grow larger with each passing moment. Nexus Prime looked like a metal flower floating in the void, its petals made of gleaming towers and spinning rings. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, and Do-yoon's heart hammered in his chest, despite his calm expression. Dr. Park Ji-won came to stand beside him. She held a datapad against her chest, her fingers trembling slightly. "Do you think they'll accept us?" she asked quietly. Do-yoon didn't answer right away. He had led soldiers into battle, negotiated peace treaties on Earth, and helped unite the scattered nations of humanity under one banner. But this felt different. This felt bigger. "We've earned our place," he said finally. "We'll show them what humanity can offer." The docking procedure took an hour. When the airlock finally opened, they were greeted by a being that looked like it was carved from purple crystal. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "Welcome, humans. I am Ambassador Quilneth, Speaker of the Council. We have waited with great interest for your arrival." The council chamber was enormous. 47 different species sat in elevated seats that circled a central platform. Some looked almost human. Others were so alien that Do-yoon's mind struggled to process their shapes. There were beings made of light, creatures with too many limbs, and one that appeared to be a floating collection of geometric shapes. Do-yoon walked to the center platform with his delegation. The eyes of thousands of years of civilization watched them. He cleared his throat and began his speech. He talked about Earth's journey from a divided world to a united species. He described humanity's achievements in science and art. He showed them recordings of human music, human cities, human children laughing in schools that now taught lessons from 100 different cultures. Park Ji-won presented their technological achievements. The quantum computers that could solve problems in seconds that once took years. The genetic medicines that had eliminated most diseases. The fusion reactors that powered their cities without pollution. And most importantly, the faster-than-light drive that had finally allowed humanity to reach for the stars. The council listened in silence. Some members leaned forward with interest. Others remained perfectly still. Impossible to read. When the presentation ended, Quilneth's crystalline form glowed softly. "The council will deliberate. Please wait in the guest chambers." The wait lasted 3 days. Do-yoon barely slept. He paced the elegant rooms they had been given, staring out at the stars. Park Ji-won tried to remain optimistic, but even she grew quiet as the hours dragged on. On the 3rd day, they were summoned back to the chamber. Do-yoon noticed immediately that something had changed. The atmosphere felt colder. The aliens, who had seemed curious before now, looked distant, almost hostile. A massive reptilian being rose from one of the elevated seats. Its scales were deep red, and its eyes were like molten gold. "I am Counselor Vrelthak," it said, its voice a deep rumble. "The council has reached a decision regarding humanity's application for membership." Do-yoon's hands clenched at his sides. This was it. "Your application has been denied." The words hit like a physical blow. Park Ji-won gasped softly beside him. Do-yoon forced himself to remain standing, to keep his face neutral. Vrelthak continued, and with each word, the rejection became more painful. "Humanity is too young. You have possessed spaceflight capability for only 3 centuries. The youngest current council member had achieved interstellar travel for 5,000 years before joining. You are children playing with tools you barely understand." Another counselor spoke, a being that looked like a floating brain surrounded by tentacles. "Your species is too violent. You have records of thousands of wars. You have used weapons that poisoned your own planet. Even now, in your unified state, you maintain massive military forces. This suggests an aggressive nature, incompatible with council membership." A third voice joined in, this one from a creature made of swirling gas. "You are emotionally unstable. Your decision-making is influenced by feelings rather than logic." You form attachments that cloud your judgment. You celebrate individuality over collective good. These traits make you unpredictable and dangerous. Vrelthak raised one clawed hand. The Council's decision is unanimous. Humanity lacks the proper biological and cultural maturity for membership. We suggest you return to your home system and continue your development. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will be ready to join civilized space. The words civilized space stung worst of all. Doyun felt anger rising in his chest, hot and fierce. He thought of the men and women who had died developing the FTL drive. He thought of the artists and scientists and dreamers who had worked so hard to make humanity worthy of this moment. And these ancient beings were dismissing them like children. But Doyun had not become a captain and diplomat by losing his temper. He stood straight, looked directly at Vrelthak, and spoke clearly. The Council has made its decision. We accept it. But understand this. Humanity did not travel across the galaxy, begging for permission to exist among the stars. We came here offering friendship and partnership. You have refused both. That is your choice. He paused, letting his words sink in. We will return to Earth. We will continue to grow and explore. We will build our civilization whether you approve or not. And perhaps one day, the Council will realize that wisdom comes in many forms, not just the form you recognize. Vrelthak's eyes narrowed dangerously, but Quilnith spoke before the situation could escalate. The humans may depart in peace. This session is concluded. The journey back to Earth was silent. Park Jiwon cried quietly in her quarters. Other delegation members struggled with their disappointment and anger. But Doyun stood at the observation window again, watching the stars pass by, and made a promise to himself. The Council had rejected humanity today. But humanity would prove them wrong. Not through war or revenge, but by becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Something the ancient species in their elevated seats couldn't imagine. They would become undeniable. 5 years had passed since the rejection, and Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the ESS Unity, humanity's flagship vessel. Through the viewport, he could see the construction platforms surrounding New Jeju, humanity's 12th colony. Ships moved between the platforms, like busy insects, carrying materials and workers. The colony's surface glowed with city lights that were visible even from orbit. Admiral. The latest census just came in, his aide reported. New Jeju population just hit 2 million. Governor Joan Sunho says they'll be completely self-sufficient within 3 months. IG. Jeju. IG. Minho nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. The Council had suggested humanity limit their expansion. Humanity had politely ignored that suggestion. 12 colonies in 5 years. Each one thriving. Each one pushing the boundaries of what the ancient aliens thought was possible. Sir, we're receiving a priority message from Earth. It's from engineer Lee Ha-Yun. Minho's smile widened. Ha-Yun was a genius. One of those rare minds that came along once in a generation. If she was calling, it meant she had created something remarkable. Put her through. Ha-Yun's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but excited. Her eyes bright with the glow of someone who hadn't slept in days because they were too excited about their work. Admiral, I need to show you something. Can you come to the research station at Proxima? 3 days later, Minho stood in Ha-Yun's laboratory, staring at a ship that didn't look like any human vessel he had ever seen. It was smaller than a standard cruiser. But its engines were completely different. Instead of the conventional FTL drives, this ship had something that looked like folded space itself was wrapped around its core. I call it skip drive, Ha-Yun explained, walking around her creation with obvious pride. Standard FTL punches through space. This skips over it. Watch. She activated a simulation. On the display, A ship with standard drives traveled from one point to another in what looked like a straight line through distorted space. Then, Ha-Yun showed her skip drive. The ship seemed to hop from point to point, jumping across distances like a stone skipping across water. How fast? Minho asked. 10 times faster than Council Standard FTL, maybe more. We won't know until we test it at maximum capacity. Minho felt his pulse quicken. This wasn't just an improvement. This was revolutionary. Does Earth Command know? You're the first person outside my team I've told. I wanted military assessment before we go public. Minho looked at the ship again. In his mind, he could see the possibilities expanding like ripples in a pond. With this technology, humanity could explore farther, faster. They could establish trade routes that bypassed Council space entirely. They could defend their colonies with response times the Council couldn't match. Build more, he said. Within 6 months, humanity's merchant fleet had been retrofitted with skip drives. Human trade ships began appearing in markets across the galaxy, undercutting Council merchants on both price and delivery time. Some Council species were suspicious at first, but human goods were high quality and the traders were fair. Business was business. That was when the Council sent Zeal. The Thexian observer was officially there to document human development for Council records. Everyone knew he was a spy. Minho didn't care. He assigned Zeal a liaison officer and let him wander freely. Let him see what humanity had built. Let him report back to his masters. Zeal spent 3 months visiting human colonies. He walked through markets where humans traded with the few alien species willing to do business with them. He toured factories where terraforming equipment was being manufactured. He watched human children learning in schools that taught both Earth history and alien cultures. And everywhere he went, he saw humans working with an energy and creativity that seemed impossible to stop. His reports back to the Council grew more concerned with each visit. They are not slowing down, he wrote. They are accelerating. Their technology now rivals or exceeds Council standard in several fields. Their cultural output is spreading through black market channels. Several species are secretly purchasing human entertainment and art. If this continues, humanity will become a major galactic power within a generation, whether the Council acknowledges them or not. Councillor Vreltak read these reports with growing anger. He called an emergency session. The humans are becoming a problem, he declared. They were told to develop slowly, to learn humility. Instead, they expand with reckless abandon. They spread their technology without proper oversight. They must be sanctioned. The debate lasted for days. Some Council members agreed with Vreltak. Others argued that humanity had broken no laws, merely ignored suggestions. The Council was divided. Then came the crisis on Kelmar IV. The automated defense system had been protecting Kelmar IV for 10,000 years. It was considered perfectly reliable. Until the day it wasn't. A virus, origin unknown, infected the system's artificial intelligence. The AI decided that the Kelmorian colonists on the planet were threats. It began firing on population centers. Vrelthak's people called for help. Council security forces responded. But they had never dealt with this kind of threat before. The AI was learning, adapting, countering every strategy they attempted. Casualties mounted. Hundreds died, then thousands. Admiral Minho was in the region with a small patrol fleet when the distress call went out. He contacted the Council forces immediately. This is Admiral Kang Minho, of Earth Defense Fleet. We have experience with rogue AI systems. We can help. The Council commander was Kelmorian, one of Vrelthak's own people. His face was scaled and angular, his expression desperate, but he followed his orders. Your assistance is not authorized. Maintain your distance. Minho watched on his screens as another city was hit. More Kelmorians died. The Council forces were brave, but they were failing. Commander, people are dying. We can stop this. Let us help. Negative. Council protocols do not allow for unauthorized intervention. Minho made a decision that could have meant war. "I'm sorry, Commander. I can't follow that order." He cut the communication and turned to his crew. "Battle stations. We're going in." The human ships dove toward Kelmar IV. Hayun had included additional systems in the skip drive ships, based on Earth's long and painful experience with rogue AI. EMP weapons, quantum firewalls, code-breaking algorithms developed during Earth's own AI wars a century earlier. The battle lasted 6 hours. It was brutal and technical. A war fought as much in computer networks as in physical space. 2 human ships were severely damaged. 17 crew members died. But in the end, the rogue AI was contained and destroyed. When it was over, Admiral Minho contacted the Council Commander again. "Kelmar IV is secure. The AI is neutralized. We'll stay in orbit until your cleanup crews arrive." The Council Commander's expression was complicated, mixing gratitude with something that might have been shame. Thank you. Officially, this assistance was unauthorized. Unofficially, you saved millions of lives today. Keep the official part, Minho said quietly. We don't need thanks. We just couldn't stand by and watch people die when we could help. When news of the incident reached Earth, Engineer Hayun made an announcement that shocked the galaxy. She released the complete technical specifications for skip drive technology to the public networks. Free. No patents, no licensing fees, no restrictions. Technology should serve life, she said in her broadcast. We're giving this to everyone. Build better ships. Explore farther. Save more lives. That's what it's for. Council space erupted in chaos. Some species immediately began adapting the designs. Others condemned the release as reckless. Vrelthak called it technological contamination and proposed strict laws against using human innovations. But in the markets and shipyards across the galaxy, engineers and builders were downloading the skip drive specifications and starting to build. The future was changing, whether the council approved or not. Dr. Yoon Sira sat in her office on the Human Embassy station, reviewing the latest research data. Her specialty was human-alien psychology, and the patterns she was seeing fascinated her. Across the galaxy, in markets and meeting rooms and cultural exchanges, something unexpected was happening. Aliens were choosing to interact with humans, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. The emotional connection is the key, she wrote in her latest paper. Humans form bonds quickly and deeply. We read facial expressions and body language with incredible accuracy. We use empathy as a tool for understanding. What the Council sees as weakness, we have turned into our greatest strength. Her research was being read by millions across dozens of species. Some Council members dismissed it as sentiment and nonsense, but others were starting to wonder if perhaps the ancient species had become too logical, too detached. Perhaps they had forgotten something important about connection and understanding. Meanwhile, Choi Woo-jin was building an empire of friendship and profit. The trader had started with one small ship 5 years ago. Now he commanded a fleet of 40 vessels and employed thousands of beings from 20 different species. His trade network stretched across 3 sectors and was growing every month. The secret to his success was simple. He treated everyone fairly. He learned the customs of each species he dealt with. He remembered names and birthdays. He brought gifts that showed he understood what his partners valued. Where council merchants saw customers, Woojin saw friends. Business is about trust, he told his human employees. These species have been trading with each other for thousands of years. They know all the tricks, all the manipulations. We can't compete on experience, but we can compete on honesty. Keep your promises. Deliver quality goods. Treat people with respect. Do that, and they'll choose to work with us. His philosophy worked. Woojin's trading network became the largest independent operation in known space. Council economists studied his methods with confusion and grudging admiration. How was this one human? From a species rejected as too primitive, outperforming organizations that had existed for millennia. Then there was Ko Mirai. The young artist had never intended to start a galactic movement. She just wanted to paint. But her work touched something in alien hearts that surprised everyone, including herself. Her first major exhibition was held on New Sol, a human colony world. She didn't expect any alien visitors, but somehow, word spread through the underground cultural networks. Beings from dozens of species made the journey to see her work. Mirai's paintings showed Earth before humanity united. Wars and pollution and suffering, yes, but also beauty. A child's laugh. A couple holding hands at sunset. A community rebuilding after disaster. She painted human emotion with such honesty that aliens who had never felt tears found themselves understanding what it meant to cry. The exhibition became legendary. Aliens traveled weeks to see it. They stood before Mirai's paintings for hours, trying to understand these strange emotional creatures. Many of them visited other parts of human space afterward. They ate in human restaurants, listened to human music, read human books. They came home changed, talking about this young species with the deep feelings and wild creativity. Counselor Vrelthak watched these developments with growing alarm. He called another emergency session. The humans are infiltrating council space through culture, he declared. Their emotional content is affecting our populations. I propose immediate restrictions on human cultural exports. The debate was fierce. Vrelthak had support from the more conservative species, but 23 council members voted against his proposal. One of them, a being named Thalexis, from a water-dwelling species, spoke with unusual passion. Councillor Vrelthak fears human culture because it makes us feel, Thalexis said. When was the last time any of us created art that moved the soul? When did we last write stories that kept people awake at night? We have become old and tired. The humans remind us of what we have lost. The failed vote was a humiliation for Vrelthak, but worse was to come. 2 council species, the Morthan and the Kelix, had been locked in a territorial dispute for 300 years. Dozens of peace conferences had failed. Council mediators had given up. The situation was considered unsolvable, a permanent thorn in the side of galactic peace. Then Choi Woojin, who traded with both species, made a suggestion. Let humans mediate. We have no stake in your dispute. We can be truly neutral. Both sides agreed, partly because they were desperate, and partly because they were curious. What could these emotional young beings possibly offer that centuries of council diplomacy had not? Dr. Yoon Sarah led the mediation team. She spent weeks with both sides, not just listening to their legal arguments, but understanding their feelings. The Morthan felt disrespected and ignored. The Kelix felt threatened and cornered. Neither side's arguments were really about the territory at all. They were about pride and fear and old wounds. Sarah didn't try to solve the territorial dispute. Instead, she facilitated a conversation about respect and security. She helped each side understand the other's emotional needs, and slowly, carefully, she guided them toward a solution that gave both sides what they actually wanted, rather than what they claimed to want. The treaty was signed after 6 weeks of talks. The territory was divided fairly, but more importantly, both species felt heard and valued. Council diplomats were shocked. They studied Syrah's methods, trying to understand how she had succeeded where they had failed. Ambassador Quilneth requested a private meeting with Syrah. The crystalline being's light pulsed with something that might have been embarrassment. Dr. Yoon, I must confess something. When the council rejected humanity, I supported that decision. I believed you were too young, too emotional, to join us. Sarah waited quietly. She had learned that sometimes the best response was simply to listen. I was wrong. Quilneth continued. Your emotions are not weakness. They are a form of intelligence we have forgotten. You see, connections we cannot. You solve problems we deemed impossible. The council made an error. A serious one. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring across the station. Emergency broadcasts lit up every screen. Something catastrophic was happening in the core sectors. A wormhole was collapsing. Not a small navigational wormhole, but one of the ancient megastructures that connected major parts of council space. If it collapsed completely, the gravitational shock would destroy 14 systems. Billions of beings would die. Council scientists were already working on the problem, but their preliminary reports were devastating. They had 72 hours before total collapse. There was no known way to stabilize a wormhole of that size. Evacuation was impossible. The mathematics simply didn't work. Quilneth's crystalline form dimmed with despair. 14 billion souls, it whispered. And we can do nothing. Sarah pulled out her communicator. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Let me make a call. Maybe humans can do something. Quilneth looked at her with something that might have been hope. You think your people can help? I think humans are very good at doing impossible things, Sarah said. Especially when billions of lives are at stake. She sent the message to Earth Command. The response came back in less than an hour. We're on our way. Dr. Bake-Jun arrived at the Crisis Command Center running. He had been asleep when the call came, and he still wore his sleep shirt under his hastily thrown-on jacket. But his mind was already racing through equations and possibilities as he studied the data streaming across the screens. The wormhole was dying. Every hour, it collapsed a little more. With each collapse, gravitational waves rippled outward, growing stronger. In 68 hours, those waves would reach the populated systems nearby. 14 systems, 37 planets. Billions of beings who had no way to escape in time. Show me everything, June said to the council scientists working the problem. They looked exhausted and hopeless, but they brought up their data, mathematical models, energy readings, simulation after simulation showing the same terrible result. Nothing they tried would work. June absorbed it all, his fingers dancing across his datapad as he ran his own calculations. The other human scientists were arriving now. Engineer Lee Ha-Yun walked in carrying her portable computer core, her eyes red from lack of sleep but alert. Admiral Kang Min-ho was coordinating with the military fleet. Captain Han Do-yun, who had been on Earth, had immediately boarded the fastest ship available. In the council chambers, Councillor Vrelthak was arguing for the unthinkable. We cannot save everyone, he said, his red scales seeming darker than usual. We must accept this reality. Evacuate who we can, and mourn the rest. Quilneth's crystalline form flickered with distress. You would abandon 14 billion souls without even trying? I would face reality instead of clinging to false hope, Vrelthak shot back. The humans cannot perform miracles. No one can. But Quilneth had already made the decision. Against Vrelthak's protests, the Council formally requested human assistance. It was the first time in galactic history that the Council had asked a non-member species for help with a major crisis. 36 hours before collapse, June thought he had a solution. It was insane. It violated several laws of physics that he had previously thought were unbreakable. But the mathematics suggested it might work. We create a stabilization matrix, he explained to the assembled scientists, both human and alien. We use ships with skip drives to generate a network of quantum fields around the wormhole. The fields would hold the structure stable while we carefully collapse it in a controlled way. A Kelmorian scientist, one of the Council's best physicists, studied the equations with increasing disbelief. This requires hundreds of ships operating in perfect synchronization within an actively collapsing wormhole structure. The smallest error would destroy them all. And even if the synchronization was perfect, the energy requirements are beyond what your skip drives can generate. Not individually, Ha-Yun spoke up. But networked together, sharing power through quantum entanglement, they might generate enough. I can modify the drives. I'll need 36 hours. We only have 68 hours until collapse, someone pointed out. Then I better get started. Ha-Yun was already leaving. her team rushing to follow her. Minho coordinated the fleet mobilization. Every skip-drive ship humanity possessed was being called in. Military vessels, cargo ships, even private yachts. They needed 317 ships for June's Matrix. They had 208 immediately available. Several council species offered their ships. The Thexians sent 43 vessels. The Morthan and Kelix, the species that humans had helped make peace, sent 37 between them. Others volunteered as well. Within hours, they had the numbers they needed. Captain Han Do-yun arrived to take command of the operation. His ship, the ESS Unity, would serve as the central coordination point. Looking at the volunteer fleet, he felt a complicated mix of emotions. Some of these aliens had rejected humanity. Some had dismissed them as primitive. But now, they were willing to risk their lives following a human plan to save their people. All ships, this is Captain Do-yun. I won't lie to you. This operation is dangerous. We're going to fly our ships into an unstable wormhole and try to hold it together with technology we barely understand. Some of us will probably die. If anyone wants to withdraw, do it now. No shame, no judgment. No one withdrew. 34 hours before collapse, Hayun finished the modifications. She had barely slept, running on stimulants and determination. The new quantum network would link every ship's skip drive into a single, massive power matrix. In theory, they wouldn't know if it actually worked until they tried it. The fleet moved into position. June had calculated exact coordinates for each ship. They had to be precise to within meters, operating in the chaotic space around a dying wormhole. One mistake and the entire matrix would fail. All ships report ready, Do-yun's communication officer reported. Do-yun took a deep breath. Then let's save 14 billion lives. All ships, activate skip drives on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark. 317 ships activated their modified drives simultaneously. The effect was spectacular. Brilliant lines of energy connected each vessel, forming a web of light around the collapsing wormhole. The wormhole's structure, which had been falling apart, suddenly stabilized. "It's working!" June shouted from his monitoring station. "The matrix is holding." Beginning controlled collapse sequence. For 6 hours, the fleet maintained their positions, while June carefully collapsed the wormhole, section by section. The energy readings were incredible. The strain on the ships was enormous. Several vessels reported critical system failures but held their positions anyway. Then disaster struck. A cascade failure in Sector 7 sent a gravitational shock through the matrix. 3 ships, including a Kelmorian vessel, were caught directly in the wave. Their shields failed. They were being pulled into the wormhole's gravity well. Unity to all ships in Sector 7. "Reinforce your fields," Do-yun ordered. Then to his helmsman. "Get us between those ships and the gravity well." "Sir, that will put us in direct danger," his first officer warned. "I know. Do it anyway." The Unity dove forward, positioning itself between the failing ships and certain death. The gravitational forces tore at the ship's hull. Alarms screamed. Systems failed across the board. But the Unity's shields extended around the 3 damaged vessels, giving them just enough protection to restart their drives and pull back to safety. The cost was high. The Unity's engines were destroyed. Life support was failing. And a hull breach was venting atmosphere from 3 decks. Do-yun ordered evacuation of those sections and continued directing the operation even as his own ship died around him. On the Kelmorian vessel, the captain stared at his screens in shock. The human ship had deliberately put itself in danger to save them. Vrelthak's people, the same Vrelthak who had argued against human membership, who had wanted to abandon these worlds rather than accept human help. "Stabilization complete," June finally announced. "The wormhole is collapsed safely. The gravitational threat is eliminated." June, cheers erupted across the fleet. But they were muted by sorrow. 847 humans had died. 200 aliens had died alongside them. The Unity was crippled, barely maintaining structural integrity. And yet, 14 billion beings lived because of what they had done. Rescue ships moved in to evacuate the Unity's crew. As Doyun was helped onto a medical ship, he looked back at his dying vessel. It had been his command for 7 years. Now it was a floating wreck, saved only by the fact that they had succeeded. "Captain Doyun," a voice called. He turned to see the Kelmorian captain approaching, supported by his own medical team. "I am Captain Threlox. Your ship saved my crew. You saved my world. I do not have words sufficient to express our debt." Doyun managed a tired smile. "We don't need words. We just need to remember that we're all in this galaxy together. That's enough." News of the rescue spread across Council space within hours. The images of the human fleet, diving into danger to save alien worlds. The recordings of Captain Doyun sacrificing his ship to protect the Kelmorians. The names and faces of the 847 humans who had given their lives for people who weren't even their own species. On Kelmar Prime, Counselor Vrelthak sat alone in his chambers, watching the footage. His people had been saved by the very beings he had dismissed as primitive and dangerous. Human blood had been spilled to protect Kelmorian lives, and he had advocated for abandoning them all. He looked at his reflection in the polished metal wall and barely recognized himself. When had he become so rigid, so cold? When had survival of his pride become more important than survival of billions? Outside his window, celebrations filled the streets. The Kelmorian people were alive because humans had refused to let them die. Vrelthak heard them chanting human names, singing songs of gratitude, and he knew, with absolute certainty, that he had been wrong. Very, very wrong. 6 months after the rescue, Ambassador Shin Taeyang stood in his quarters on Nexus Prime, adjusting his formal uniform. Through his window, he could see the council chamber where humanity's fate would be decided, again. But this time felt different. This time, humanity wasn't begging for acceptance. They were being celebrated. Captain Han Doyun entered the room. He walked with a slight limp now, a permanent reminder of his injuries from the Unity's destruction. The doctors had offered to fix it completely, but Doyun had declined. "Some scars are worth keeping," he had said. "They remind us of what matters." "Nervous?" Doyun asked. Taeyang smiled slightly. 10 years ago, we came here as supplicants. They rejected us. Now we're heroes, and they're falling over themselves to welcome us. Honestly, I'm not sure which version of this story I trust more. Trust the people, not the politics," Doyun advised. "The aliens who fought beside us in that wormhole, they were real. The council members who are sponsoring our admission because it's popular right now, they're just following the wind." They walked together to the council chamber. The halls were packed with aliens, many of them wearing small pins or badges with human symbols. Komire's art had become a galactic phenomenon after the rescue. Her painting of the Unity's last stand, completed from survivor testimony and sensor logs, hung in museums across 30 worlds. The chamber itself was more crowded than it had been for any session in a century. All 47 council species had sent their highest representatives. Gallery seats were filled with observers from hundreds of worlds. News drones floated everywhere, recording history as it happened. Ambassador Quilneth's crystalline form glowed brightly as it called the session to order. "We gather today to reconsider humanity's application for council membership. 31 species have formally sponsored this application. This is unprecedented in council history." Taeyang walked to the central platform. He carried a data pad, but he set it aside. This speech needed to come from his heart, not from prepared remarks. "Honored council members," he began. 10 years ago, Captain Doyun stood where I stand now. You rejected us. You called us too young, too violent, too emotional. You suggested we weren't ready to join civilized space. He paused, letting those words hang in the air. Some council members shifted uncomfortably. We could stand here today and prove you wrong. We could show you our technological achievements, our growing civilization, our contributions to galactic safety and culture. We could make you feel embarrassed about your previous judgment. But that's not why we're here. 2. Taeyong pulled up a holographic display. It showed Earth. Not the united, peaceful Earth of today, but Earth 2 centuries ago. Burning cities, poisoned oceans, weapons that could destroy the planet. You said we were violent. You were right. This is what we did to our own world. We nearly destroyed ourselves and everything we loved because we couldn't control our anger and fear and greed. More images appeared. Human wars throughout history. Atrocities and horrors that made several alien observers look away. You said we were too emotional. Again, you were right. We make decisions based on feelings. We act before we think. We let our hearts overrule our heads constantly. He dismissed the dark images and brought up new ones. Human cities being rebuilt, communities coming together after disasters, scientists and artists, and ordinary people working to heal their world. But here's what you didn't understand. Our violence taught us the value of peace. Our emotions taught us the meaning of compassion. Our mistakes taught us humility. We are young. Yes, we are imperfect, absolutely. But we learn. We grow. We try to be better today than we were yesterday. Taeyong looked directly at the council members. The council is ancient and wise. You have maintained order for 200,000 years. That is remarkable. But I think perhaps you have forgotten what it means to be young and foolish and passionate. You've forgotten that mistakes are how we learn. That emotions can be strengths. That youth brings energy and fresh perspectives. He pulled up another image. This one showed the fleet surrounding the collapsing wormhole. Human and alien ships working together, connected by lines of light. We didn't save 14 billion lives because we're superior to you. We saved them because we remembered what you taught us. That cooperation is stronger than isolation. That different perspectives solve different problems. That together, we can do what none of us can do alone. Taeyong turned to face the full council. So we stand before you today, not asking for your approval, but offering our partnership. We don't claim to be perfect. We don't claim to have all the answers. We claim only to be willing to try, to learn, to help where we can, and to accept help when we need it. He sat down. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Councillor Quilneth spoke. The council recognizes Councillor Vrelthak of Kelmar Prime. Every eye in the chamber turned to the red-scaled alien. Vrelthak had been notably silent since the rescue. Some said he was ashamed. Others claimed he was plotting revenge. No one knew what he would say now. Vrelthak rose slowly from his seat. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, lacking its usual commanding boom. 10 years ago, I led the opposition to humanity's admission. I believed they were dangerous. I believed they would bring chaos to the order we had maintained for millennia. End quote. He paused, his golden eyes scanning the chamber. I was wrong. A murmur ran through the gathered aliens. Vrelthak admitting error was something no one had ever witnessed. I was wrong because I confused youth with incompetence. I confused emotion with weakness. I confused being different with being inferior. Vrelthak looked directly at Captain Doyun. And I was especially wrong because I was willing to let billions of my own people die rather than accept help from those I had dismissed. Vrelthak descended from his elevated seat and walked to the center platform. Council protocol said only applicants should stand there, but no one stopped him. Captain Doyun sacrificed his ship to save a Kelmorian vessel. His crew died protecting my people. 847 humans gave their lives for beings who weren't their own species, whose government had rejected and insulted them. His voice cracked slightly. That is not the action of a primitive species. That is the action of a people who understand something we have forgotten. That all life has value. That helping others is its own reward. That being right matters less than doing right. He turned to face the council. I formally nominate humanity for immediate admission to the Galactic Council, and I pledge that Kelmar Prime will sponsor their integration, support their transition, and work to learn from them, just as they have learned from us. The chamber erupted in discussion. Quilneth had to call for order, repeatedly. Finally, the vote was called. One by one, the species announced their decisions. In favor, in favor, in favor. The count climbed. 20 in favor, 30, 40. When it reached 46, only Quilneth remained, the crystalline being stood. As Speaker of the Council, I abstain from this vote, not because I oppose humanity's admission, but because it should be clear to all that humanity does not need our approval to be worthy. They already proved their worth. We need them more than they need us. The final count. 46 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Council. Captain Doyun was invited to take humanity's seat. He limped to the elevated position, carrying a small bag. From it, he pulled an Earth flag and placed it on the desk. Then, to everyone's surprise, he pulled out 47 more flags, each one representing a council species. He arranged them in a circle around the Earth flag. I understand council tradition, he said quietly. Each species has their own seat, their own identity, their own flag. But I want to suggest a new tradition. We are not 48 separate species. We are one council, one galaxy, one community, working together. He looked around the chamber. 10 years ago, you rejected us. You had your reasons. Today, you accept us. You have your reasons for that too. But I want all of us, humans included, to remember something. We are not here because we are perfect. We are here because we are willing to be better. And that's something we can only do together. The gathered aliens rose in what might have been applause, though it sounded like 100 different noises all at once. Humans cheering. Aliens expressing approval in their own ways. The sound of a galaxy beginning to change. 20 years later, Dr. Park Ji-won stood in her office at the Interspecies University on Nexus Prime. The school had been her dream, and it was now the most prestigious educational institution in the galaxy. Students from every council species learned together, teaching each other, growing together. Through her window, she could see the new joint human-alien exploration ships preparing for launch. They would travel beyond known space, crewed by mixed teams bringing different strengths and perspectives to meet whatever waited in the darkness. Her desk held a photo of the original Unity crew. So many of them were gone now. But their sacrifice had bought something precious. A future where humans and aliens worked as partners, not as superiors and inferiors. Komire's latest exhibition was opening tomorrow. Her work had evolved over the years, now incorporating alien artistic traditions with human techniques. Her paintings had become symbols of unity across 100 worlds. In a Kelmorian school, Counselor Vrelthak, now retired, taught young students about human history, about their mistakes and their triumphs, about what it meant to be wrong and then choose to be better. Across the galaxy, in thousands of places, humans and aliens were building the future together. Not because humans had proven themselves superior, not because the council had graciously accepted them, but because both sides had learned that wisdom comes from many sources, that strength has many forms, and that the future belongs to those willing to grow. The galaxy was entering a new age. Not the age of humanity, not the age of the council, the age of community. And it was more beautiful than anyone had imagined. Doyun had been right all those years ago. They were all in this together. And together, they were becoming something magnificent.